Alright, so this video is going to cover my second rheumatology appointment. That rheumatology appointment happened very early in the first week of April. And it was about 2 weeks after my first rheumatology appointment. And I had 2 weeks to get a lot of testing done. That included a CT scan, a blood draw or blood draws, a pulmonary function test, a hall walk, and an ultrasound that I covered for a study that I signed up for my initial appointment. The idea with this second visit was that I was supposed to speak to the rheumatologist about the plan of care and what they're going to do going forward. And of course, they would be reviewing the results that I had and then discussing that with me. In this second rheumatology appointment, I found out that I had diffuse scleroderma or diffuse systemic sclerosis. And that's the worst one of all. I originally thought that I would have limited scleroderma. I think it's called limited. I'm not sure what the correct wording is for it, but let's just go with limited. And I believe that because the rheumatologist and the person that was assisting him, the doctor, it sounded like they were going through their skin score and they were talking about how far it went up the arm and all this other stuff. And I thought it was limited, and my hopes got up so high, thinking that it was limited because of how they were discussing things. And I should have figured out when I was told that I produced an antibody that was only produced, I believe, by 20% of those who suffer from scleroderma or systemic sclerosis. But I didn't figure that out. I don't know why, but some reason I left that first appointment thinking it was limited scleroderma. And when the doctor came in, it was just him. It wasn't the other assisting doctor. When we discussed it, what I did is I brought up a referral that had paperwork that said systemic sclerosis unspecified. And that's what made me bring up, hey, what do I have? And he said diffuse, and I was like, wow. I pretty much held it together. I had some tears. I was very disappointed. I always had in the back of my mind that it was going to be limited. It wouldn't be so bad. But it was diffuse. And so we also discussed at this appointment, we discussed medication we put on. I believe the term is something called myocephalate. It's supposed to be, I think, it's supposed to be like Cellcept. If you've heard of Cellcept, you know what I'm talking about. That Cellcept was supposed to be taken after the time I get my fourth COVID vaccination. So I'm waiting a little bit of time on that one. In addition, I found out that I had ILD, which is interstitial lung disease. And it's early, and I was told that my scleroderma is early as well. I'm not sure how early people develop ILD or the complication of it. Does it normally come up when it starts up or what? But I was kind of... My original idea when I talked to my primary care doctor was that this is going to be asthma. It's not ILD. And when I went to this visit, when I read the original visit with the rheumatologist, he heard crackling, or I think it's called crackling. It was very light, but he did hear it, and the CT bore that one out, and it showed that I had ILD. All this time I had been coughing, and I kept thinking it's just my asthma's getting worse, or it was asthma, and it wasn't. The CT scan, when you go in there, if this is your first CT scan that you take, it's a huge machine. I saw it when I walked through, and they had the door open, and when you walk past it, you'll be surprised at how big it is. If you never had an MRI or your CT scan, you'll be surprised with the size. And because I have scleroderma, or diffuse scleroderma, there's an issue where when I got into the CT bed, it was hard to get in and it was hard to get up, and I had to be assisted by the person, one of the people who was in the room for that CT scan. In addition, it was kind of hard for me to hold my arms all the way up as far as they wanted. I guess they wanted them higher. That would be difficult for someone like me. But I got through that, and it's been a lot. Um, it's been a lot of testing. Once you get your diagnosis, or once you get your diagnosis, they're going to try and set a baseline, and this is why I had all the testing done. It's a lot of appointments real quick. I've got used to now finding the location where I need to go pretty easily in the hospital. That's how many visits I've gone on. In fact, I've gone to the cafeteria and I wondered if maybe the person who's working the machine that recognizes me, and it could just be me thinking that. But yeah, it's a lot of visits. And then I know that I'll probably have to continue doing these tests every so often just to determine how far everything's progressing. At this point, I'm I'm disappointed it was what it was, but I've kind of accepted it. I knew it was a possibility that it would happen. I was really hoping for limited. Oh, I was. Um, but my questions about how far this would go and how quickly, I was told by rheumatologist that it would be the first year that would determine how quickly this advances. I asked about mobility aids. He said it was too early to discuss it right now. Like I said, the first year is when it's going to advance, and we'll figure out from there. On another side note here, when they did the CT scan, they actually found 2 to 3 problems within the lungs. One of them was the lymph nodes were prominent, and there was multiple prominent lymph nodes in the lung. They weren't classified as swollen; they were just prominent, and I was able to clear up with a rheumatologist that that's something that can happen with this disease. I originally thought when I saw the test and tried to read it on my own that it was going to be cancer. Right now, that's not what they're thinking it is. It's just the lymph nodes can swell, and that's what's happened in my case. Um, right now at work, I finally provided I provided a doctor's note, or at least the form that they want for my restriction that my primary care doctor placed me on once they got all the test results back, and she was able to read them. And right now, one of the restrictions wasn't written in a way that was acceptable to them, and I figured this would happen um, because of what I do. I'm exposed to chemicals that can make me cough a little more, and then they're saying I've had a talk with one of the people in leadership that says, well, if you are having an issue with chemicals that you're exposed to in this area, then you're exposed to chemicals all over in this area. So it's not just, well, you can't just limit and say, well, you can't do this type of work because you're exposed to this sort of chemical or fumes from this source, because you're exposed to chemicals all over the place. That kind of is a gist of what was said, and it tells you what picture I'd look forward to when it comes to this.